Okay, good morning. I assume your quietness is a signal you're ready to get started, so why don't we go ahead and get started. So welcome and thanks for attending and viewing today's session. We had many participants last week view this via live stream, so we know several folks will be joining us that way as well today. My name is Alan Bolton. I'm the Vice President for Financial Affairs and Administration, and I'm pleased to be co-chairing UAB's Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost Search Committee, along with my colleague, Dr. Paulette Dilworth, who is over here. She, of course, is our Vice President for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. I want to also thank the members of our great search committee who are in the audience today, and if you could raise your hands. Search committee members, thank you very much. They've done yeoman's work over the past few months, so we really appreciate their dedication to both the integrity and the outcome of this process. A few details about today before I introduce our speaker. Dr. Justice will be making a presentation of about 30 minutes, probably?
I hope so.
And then we will open the floor for questions. Ms. Alicia Jones has the microphone and will bring the microphone to you, so if you'll raise your hand if you have a question. It is important that we use the microphone not only for the acoustics in this room, but especially for those that are participating via our live stream today. After we conclude today's session, we do ask that each of you go online and complete the candidate evaluation forms. We're doing that throughout the process. So please avail yourself of that opportunity to provide the search committee with your feedback. So now it is my honor to introduce our candidate for Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost, Dr. George Justice. He is the Dean of Humanities in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and Associate Vice President for Humanities and Arts in the Office of Knowledge Enterprise Development at Arizona State University. He's a specialist in 18th century British literature. He's the author and editor of scholarship on the literary marketplace, on authorship, and on women's writing. He received his BA from Wesleyan University and both his MA and PhD from the University of Pennsylvania. Prior to coming to ASU, Dr. Justice taught at the University of Pennsylvania, at Marquette University, at LSU, and at the University of Missouri, where he also served as Vice Provost for Advanced Studies and Dean of the Graduate School. He served as an elected member of the Board of the Directors of the Council of Graduate Schools and has been a featured speaker at meetings of the Council of Graduate Schools, the Association of Graduate Schools, and the Jane Austen Society of North America. So please join me in welcoming Dr. George Justice.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody for coming out this morning. I'm going to spend, I hope, no more than a half an hour talking a little bit about myself, and I thank you for the introduction, but more specifically about my vision for the future of higher education, particularly in the context of the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I've had a great day here at UAB, learning about the amazing things that are going around on campus, meeting students, meeting deans, faculty. This is an exciting place, and I'm really privileged to be here with you this morning. I wanted to start with one vision of the future of higher education. I currently serve, as Alan mentioned, at Arizona State University, which is one of the stranger and more exciting places in higher education today. You can see a little bit about, you can read about Arizona State in President Michael Crow's book, Designing the New American University, and I will be referring to a number of things that we're doing at Arizona State, not as a model for what I would do as provost here at UAB, but as a kind of idea of thinking through what the opportunities and challenges and the really exciting future we have in higher education in America today. Arizona State has put forward kind of ex post facto a founding charter for the institution. So President Crow wanted to distill the essence of not only what Arizona State is doing, but what many public, especially institutions of higher education, need to do in the world. And I'll just read this out. I find it inspirational, and we continue to work at Arizona State to make this part of the fabric of the work that faculty, staff, administrators, and students themselves understand that they're doing at ASU. ASU is a comprehensive public research university measured not by whom it excludes, but by whom it includes and how they succeed, advancing research and discovery of public value and assuming fundamental responsibility for the economic, social, cultural, and overall health of the communities it serves. That is an ambitious agenda. I'm going to pick apart a few of those things as we talk this morning, but it's bold. It says that universities are central to the communities that they serve, and the key thing, and the thing that we really try to focus on, and I'll talk a little bit more about this morning, is that we measure ourselves by whom we include rather than exclude. Excellence at Arizona State is measured by a number of things. One of them is the growing research portfolio, and we're a few slots behind UAB in the NSF's Herd rankings, but considering there's no medical school at ASU, it's a really comprehensive approach to how to build research among many disciplines related to grand challenges at a research university. So we certainly measure ourselves by the trajectory of growth in research and significance in research. What we really measure ourselves by is how do we include the broadest range of students and community members who can benefit from our presence in a large metropolitan area. And becoming excellent does not mean for us raising admission standards so that a smaller percentage of students gets in and they have ever increasing qualifications to get into university. We have a great honors college at ASU which has continued to attract very, very strong students. President Crow likes to say we have the size of 5 Amherst colleges with students of the qualifications of Amherst in our Barrett Honors College, but we educate the B students from Arizona Public High Schools as well. We're proud to do it, and we take that as the mark of our success, that students who get Bs in Arizona high schools can come to Arizona State University, complete bachelor's degrees with the deep support of faculty and staff, and go on to change the state, change the trajectory of their families' lives, and change the economic conditions of our country. So it's a very ambitious goal that the charter lays out, and it is based on inclusion rather than exclusion. So a little bit about my professional background. You heard it. The key things that I'd outlined from the introduction and my qualifications laid out here are that I've had both university experience, having university-wide experience, having been dean of the graduate school at Missouri, where we worked with medical school, health professions, law, engineering, agriculture, journalism, engineering, business, arts and sciences, et cetera. A very extensive range of colleges. And I tried to learn the structure of academic disciplines across the institution when obviously as an English professor I'm not going to learn the content areas at that stage in my life. But I really did pride myself on getting to understand from deans and faculty how they saw their disciplines, how they thought that educating students and doing research fit into a larger structure of knowledge and education. I went to Arizona State because I hadn't had line dean experience. I hadn't worked with hiring, tenure and promotion, managing large academic units. We've consolidated academic units in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and around the university, in often cases giving them funny sounding names. So I oversee 3 very large academic units. A Department of English with 65 tenured and tenure track faculty and 300 teaching faculty if you include TAs, a School of International Letters and Cultures that teaches 21 languages, and a School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies, which has brought together formerly independent departments of history, philosophy, and religious studies with a semi-successful attempt to create transdisciplinary education and research. And we can talk about what it means to bring together units. Some of the very successful units at Arizona State in both education and research are consolidations of different academic disciplines, including in the social sciences, our School of Human Evolution and Social Change, which is a kind of very far-reaching anthropology-based department, our School of Earth and Space Exploration, which when I first heard about it, I thought it was a Star Trek kind of thing, but has been unbelievably successful in bringing together especially geology and astronomy, and is the home of Psyche, which is one of the 2 missions recently chosen by NASA, and that'll be a $700 million project in our College of Liberal Arts and Sciences when all is said and done. Our School of Life Sciences brought together formerly different life science departments and has become a research powerhouse as well. Beyond the CV, very quickly, I was born and raised in Philadelphia, PA. I'm a child. One reason that public education and the ASU charter has spoken to me so directly is I'm the child of first-generation college students. My grandfather on my father's side was a coal miner in Mingo County, West Virginia. My father worked his way through West Virginia University, president of the student body at WVU, and was a Rhodes Scholar. And to me, that is the trajectory of public higher education. Coal miner's son ends up profoundly changing his life and the life of his children and having a positive effect on the world around him. Similarly, my mother was the daughter of immigrants from Lebanon who believed very deeply in higher education and sent all 4 of their daughters to university, with 2 of them getting advanced degrees in the late 1940s and early 1950s. So I grew up knowing that education is profoundly transformational on both a personal, a public, and an institutional perspective. And so it's been wonderful for me getting involved in broader ranges of higher education beyond what I love doing, which is teaching about Jane Austen and writing about 18th century literature. I worked at Harper & Row, which became HarperCollins publishers between college and grad school, and that gave me a good sense. I think it's good preparation for higher education administration, because you realize you're not the main thing in town, but what you can do is work with incredibly talented people, some of whom are in the spotlight, some of whom are not in the spotlight, and the books that people love to read and they get distributed in libraries and through bookstores are actually the product of many, many talented people who have something to contribute to the final product. So that has both infused my scholarship, but it's also given me a perspective on creating knowledge, creating education, and how universities might work. My wife, Devney Lozer, is a professor of English, also a Jane Austen scholar, and you can look her up by Googling Stone Cold Jane Austen. She is a erstwhile roller derby, I won't call it a star, but she is an active participant in the bizarre subculture of roller derby, and you can find out more about her by Googling that name. We have 2 sons, Carl, who's 13 and will be going into 9th grade, and Lowell, who's 11 and will be going into 7th. And finally, I don't do a lot other than work and family, both of which I find extremely energizing and exciting, but I do love following baseball, and I am trying to transition from the Phillies to the Diamondbacks, but I grew up hating the Atlanta Braves, which I guess is the closest major league team, and I will never get to loving the Braves. Sorry about that for anybody who cares about that. To me, the big strategic question here, and I don't think this is rocket science to anybody or something that other people coming in to talk about this position wouldn't say, but how does UAB take a world-leading set of research, educational, and clinical assets, primarily in the health and natural sciences, and create a world-leading comprehensive university with a distinct identity and wide-ranging coherent strengths? I don't think there's anything magical, mysterious, or things that everybody in this room hasn't already thought about related to this question, but it is not only what I see as the challenge that UAB faces, and it's a really great challenge because you have a strong base to build this on, but it's also the reason that I'm attracted to this institution, because you've got a very strong institution and you have unbelievable opportunity to do things that are not burdened by the past. One thing that I loved University of Missouri, and it was a great place to teach and get involved in administration, but University of Missouri was desperate to be the University of Illinois, or the University of Michigan. So everything we did, even when we talked about innovation, was really, well, let's innovate so that we can be like Illinois or Michigan. I've loved being at Arizona State, which is not interested in being anything except the absolutely best institution it can be to serve its multiple constituents. And I think UAB is similarly not burdened by a past and not burdened by any obvious aspirational peers or competition. It's a kind of one-of-a-kind institution which has the opportunity to build on its strengths and do some things that no other university in the country can do. So I was asked to talk about the future of higher education in the United States. My subtitle is One Size Does Not Fit All. I don't think we'll all be moving to 100,000 students that Arizona State is close to having, and we're not all going to be Haverford College with 1,100 students. I think that there will continue to be distinctly different higher education institutions that are especially geared towards distinct populations, whether they're very broadly constituted or very narrowly constituted, and they will exist in different geographic areas. So I've kind of thought about size, location, focus on undergraduate versus graduate education, research, and a kind of interesting distinction, which is in some ways decreasing in importance, but will continue to persist as an important differential between public and private. Here at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, I see our size as what I would call medium-large. So we've talked a little, if we're relatively around 20,000 students right now. I've talked to some people yesterday who thought 25,000. I think ultimately a very sweet spot for an institution here in this place, serving the populations that it has served and with the current areas of strength that it has and projected future areas of strength, I would say 28 to 30. I was told by some of the deans yesterday that that was a startlingly high number. But being in a context where we've got 100,000, that really feels like medium-large to me, and a great size to educate a very wide range of students in the traditional undergraduate fields, as well as continuing to excel in medical education and in graduate education in health sciences. And so I would see growth in undergraduate and graduate student numbers, but, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit in terms of what I see as the future of curriculum. Our location is here is a very attractive location for students. I'd call this, and this is, I'm new to Birmingham, and I made this up before I actually got here, but I think it was accurate enough. We're a medium-sized, attractive, diverse city. That's a strength here. I know that from our recruiting in Arizona, students from the north like to come south because it's a warmer, nicer place to go to college. And you know, there may be some worse reasons to choose a place. It's not a great primary reason for choosing a college, but it's not a terrible reason either, and we can take advantage of it. And cities of this size, particularly in the South, are home to increasing numbers of what Richard Florida would call the creative class. And I think that that is a genuine opportunity that Birmingham and the growth in the institution that I've seen from the outside in terms of the humanities and the arts is something that can be built upon. And so this is an attractive size city with an attractive number of growing amenities for the kinds of students who are attracted to a thriving urban location. So you're not going to compete with the students who want to join a fraternity and go to and participate in traditional college life at the University of Alabama at Tuscaloosa, but you will find really creative, smart students from the sciences to the arts who see education and cultural life as their priority when they come to college. In terms of undergrad and graduate focus, I see building both. So in what I've put here on the slide in terms of graduate education, continually enhance professional degrees in the health sciences and elsewhere. I think there's an opportunity to create new master's programs across disciplines, colleges, and departments and schools, building on strengths. And in terms of what we've discovered, and I can talk about this both in Q&A and a little bit later in the presentation, mode of delivery is something very important to talk about, and I think online and hybrid education is really where master's education is going, and this is something that we've seen. So just some examples, and I have experience both at Missouri and at Arizona State in both of these areas. You have biomedical informatics and you have computer science, but the promise of big data in informatics goes everywhere into the social sciences and into the humanities and arts as well. And with that strong capability that you necessarily have, and I understand you're building more facilities, that kind of research can go everything from the libraries to the English department to the foreign languages with creativity. And so this is an opportunity both for educational programs and for research. Something very obvious and something we're developing at Arizona State in partnership with the Mayo Clinic, which has a large outpost in Scottsdale and Phoenix, is health humanities. It doesn't mean that every person you have to hire into an English department is somebody who has health as a focus. But to have a distinct identity as an institution in the health sciences is an opportunity to build on a creative way of even looking at traditional disciplines like my own. Can add focus, can add identity, and can make students really excited about things that they may have thought were not interesting to them in high school. So it's just one way in which an institutional strength can be extended to further reaches of the institution. I talked about excellence plus access, and I see that as an opportunity here. So first two bullet points are the Honors College, and what we found in, that the Honors College has been at Arizona State incredibly useful for building up the size and quality, not just of the liberal arts, but especially in business and engineering. And I look at business and engineering here, and I think both of those colleges are, just from the numbers perspective, certainly open to building and to gaining more students. And the Honors College has been really helpful at Arizona State in bringing in top quality students who want an honors education but also want to end up doing either a business degree or an engineering degree. On the other side, we don't really have developmental courses at Arizona State. There's a program for students who come in with less standard academic credentials, but what we've really been focusing on are ways of those students being brought up to full speed through adaptive learning. And sometimes this is technology, sometimes this is creative approaches to other classes. I've looked at the retention rates here, and everybody in this room knows this, but they aren't as high as one would want them to be for an institution that aspires to what UAB aspires to. And we've been able to bring retention rates up very high. We're still working. Our 4-year graduation rate at Arizona State is pretty good. It's comparable to other Pac-12 schools. Our 6-year graduation rate is not as good. And so we're trying to figure out what happens between 4 and 6 as those benchmarks are considered in higher education. But the crucial point there is that it matters to us, that retention is an absolutely critical feature if we want to change the world by creating more graduates. It's also an absolutely critical feature for those tuition dollars to keep coming into the institution so that we can fuel a well-rounded educational experience from first year to graduation. The cliche was that in the 1990s, quite cynically, Arizona State brought in huge freshman classes knowing that 40% of them wouldn't be there in year 2, but wasn't that great to have their tuition dollars in the first year. We are absolutely committed now to graduating every student who comes to the university. And that ranges from close coaching to warning sign electronic monitoring. I don't like that word, but sort of tracking what students are doing throughout their first couple of weeks at school. I also believe that general education is something no university is doing well, and with the distinct range of assets that we have here, there's an opportunity to do a really creative new general education program. And I wouldn't presume to know what it is. That's something that a creative faculty should take on and energize themselves about developing. I also think transdisciplinary approaches to attractive degrees are something that can really be put at the undergraduate level. Our business school, very good business school at Arizona State, for example, has done a business and film concentration for their BA degree in business. And some of the film and media studies folks in arts and sciences were very worried about that. We're going to lose students, and we probably will lose some majors, but we're going to gain a lot more credit hours because those areas of study, having a practical focus as well, become appealing to many of the first-generation students that we attract to the institution. And nursing and language. Why don't we have more nurses who speak, at least in our areas, in Arizona, Spanish and Chinese? And so nursing and journalism have teamed up with our foreign languages to offer specializations so that majors can actually have proficiency in another language, very useful for their careers. So I've talked a little bit about online. I call it the paradox of reach. We want to be totally embedded in a local community, and the universities of the future are going to do more than just be walled-off entities providing education, maybe in greater percentage to people of their local areas, but we have to be fully embedded members of the community in which we're housed. At the same time, the future of higher education involves online education, reaching out to students in complicated ways and in creative ways. So what UAB needs to figure out is what to do here, what do students want to come to a university to do, how are these assets for local audiences best developed, but also what are our assets that can be offered at a distance. So the great universities of the future are going to be deeply embedded locally, but they are also going to have a global reach. And so thinking about what we can do distinctively at both the bachelor's and the graduate level is the challenge of the future, and it's a challenge to make the best use of our assets. And I hate to say it in terms of revenue, because it's been very beneficial at Arizona State to have extensive online offerings. And I know in many disciplines, including my own, there's been some reluctance to engage in this kind of education. I would recommend my spouse's article from the Chronicle of Higher Education from about 3 weeks ago now, Why I Teach Online. And you can Google it. And what Devaney has discovered in teaching online courses, as she has subtitled it, she had no idea it was a feminist cause to teach online students, because so many of her students are in their late 20s or 30s, women who either had families or had to drop out of college for taking care of parents or other family reasons, and they've come back to college. And it's been profoundly transformational to her to connect with incredibly talented students in many different areas of the country for whom there is a desperate need for this education, and this is the only way that they can get it. So it isn't just a money-making thing, it actually is a profound extension of the core values that we should have in higher education. So if we get to research, and I'm not going to impinge on the territory of our esteemed Vice President for Research, but my experience in the Office of Knowledge Enterprise Development as an Associate Vice President of Research tells me that there are many, many different ways that we can build on the incredible world-leading strength of biomedical research here at UAB to extend into the other colleges. And there are very obvious areas in business, in engineering, in health professions that can be done. But there are a lot of opportunities in arts and sciences, including in the social sciences and humanities, where, in my experience, faculty have really gotten charged up with the idea that they can contribute to grand challenge research. And health is the obvious grand challenge that the university is addressing here, but health extends into issues of sustainability and security and other things that are facing our country. In terms of public or private, this is a complicated question, and I really believe, and this is based on experience going from a university that was struggling to move from state dependency to a state support model, to a university which is totally dedicated to the public in profound ways, but has taken an entrepreneurial approach to what that means financially and independently in terms of research and teaching. But my statement is that UAB will be a public university dedicated to the public good, operating in concert with the state, but with the entrepreneurial approach of an independent enterprise. And I don't mean a for-profit enterprise, because profit is not at all what an institution like this is looking at, but we want an entrepreneurial spirit and a recognition that we have the power with our incredible creative assets, our intellectual assets, and our research assets to grow streams of funding, whether it's in educational products, whether it's in research, tech transfer, whether it's in philanthropy. These are all things, and we don't have the traditional alumni base to raise money from, and that makes it complicated in the areas of development. But what we have is a mission and a connection to a community that can be attractive to a number of funders, whether individual philanthropists or foundations. Diversity is absolutely critical, and it's not just critical because we're in a diverse part of the country and because our country is becoming diverse. It is the central challenge, but it is also the central fuel of innovation, both in our universities and in societies. So there is nothing more important than attracting and educating the population of America's future, and attracting as our faculty, and this is really an important job of the provost, to figure out the structures through which we can attract the most diverse range of faculty in every unit across the campus. And as I kind of bolded my penultimate bullet there, diversity compels a continuous, constructive, and creative rethinking of everything from practice to theory across the university. I will challenge all of the faculty here at the institution, if I came here as provost, to rethink what their curriculum looks like given what the United States looks like, to rethink the way that they teach given how students come to the university. I think that is not giving up on our principles, it's giving up on what we learned 30 years ago. It's engaging the people that we serve. And that is a positive thing that's going to lead to better education, better research, better connection with the community. Also, the University of the Future is absolutely going to work through partnerships. And I've listed, these are all very obvious ways that a place like the University of Alabama can partner. That takes not only saying it, it takes an open approach by which people come in and become part of the campus. People who are not faculty or paid staff or alumni, people who are interested in what we do here should be invited in and become full partners in very creative ways, which means we have to listen to them. We were trying to work on that's a bad way of putting it. We were trying to work with a donor who had expressed some interest in one of our large humanities projects. And we had worked it up, and we did this great what I thought was a great presentation. And he's a very smart guy. And he said, well, here's what's wrong with what you just said. And like steam's coming out of my ears. But and I'm not going to fund you right now. But as I thought about it over the next few days, I realized he was absolutely right. Not only right about the presentation, we hadn't quite geared it to what he was interested in, he was actually right about the structure of the project that we were putting together. And so being truly open to partnerships with individuals, foundations, governments, community groups, means truly listening and being willing to change our highly educated academic points of view on profoundly important projects. Finally, the role of the provost. And this is, I don't think, anything unconventional. The provost has to support the community, manage the academic enterprise, and make sure all the money goes to where it has to go and all the faculty are able to teach what they have to teach. We have to lead the conversations to transform the academic enterprise. I'm not somebody who sees myself as a manager of things that exist on the ground. I would come, and the only reason I'm really interested in opportunities like this as a collaborator in effecting profound change, because I think higher education in the United States needs profound change, or it will get worse. Because things in the world do get worse. I'm not a Pollyanna, but I am an optimist that with hard work, creativity, what we have, which are brilliant students, brilliant faculty, great staff, great facilities, we have every building block to make profoundly transformational and positive institutions out of what we have. but I don't think it's going to happen by itself. I actually think it's going to take active intervention by the folks who are the constituent parties here, faculty, especially the faculty of the institution. Finally, my last slide is on Arizona State's design aspirations, and I won't read them out. This is a poster that is in almost every public building on the Arizona State campus. And in a way, that is ridiculous. And when I first got there, I thought I was in George Orwell's 1984. What I have found is that these kinds of things focus all of our attention on who we are and what we want to do. They're what we want to do. These preceded the charter that I began the presentation with, but they're the kind of underpinning principles of operation that kind of energize many people's work on a daily basis. And I think bringing the community together so that we all know what UAB is. It doesn't mean UAB isn't a huge place with a lot of different things that have nothing to do with each other, but to be on the same page and to have the pride and the excitement about being at a transformational institution is something that the senior leadership of the institution needs to provide. It's something that I hope I could provide if I came here as provost, and I think that it's an opportunity here to do something really amazing. So with that, here is my contact information. Very happy to hear from you by email or by phone. That's my cell number. Please don't hesitate to reach out in the next couple of weeks if you have questions about this that we can't answer right now. And very happy to open it up to conversation. Alicia, can I give you the microphone? Oh, not the microphone? You've got the microphone.
Got the microphone. First question? Okay.
You mentioned libraries briefly and funding in many ways. It's not atypical that academic libraries have suffered in funding areas for the last 10 years or so. UAB libraries find themselves in a position where the recovery has not really occurred, and we're underfunded really more than most major research universities in the Southeast. Have you in your career already had to make an impassioned, stance for increasing library funding? And if not, what would your strategy be at UAB if you saw that come forward while you were here?
Well, I have been lucky enough to be pretty involved with the libraries, both at Missouri, but especially at Arizona State. I was asked, within a month of arriving there 4 years ago, I was asked to chair the search committee for the next director of libraries at Arizona State. Had a great search committee that included a lot of librarians, so I learned a lot about what had been going right and wrong, but also faculty members who had a deep interest from a number of perspectives on the libraries. Now, we did a very unconventional thing. So we hired not a professional librarian with an MLS. We hired a classical and medieval scholar, a historian named James O'Donnell, who had his recent job. He had just stepped down from being provost at Georgetown University. And he likes to say he taught the first MOOC when they, through Perseus Project in the 1980s, classicists taught a large internet course. So he's somebody who's both deeply enmeshed in very traditional areas of humanistic scholarship, but had been chief information officer at the University of Pennsylvania in the 1990s, and so had been thinking deeply about how technology relates to scholarship. He is embarking and hiring a very powerful university librarian with the profound support of the president means that we are totally revamping the physical structure, changing the nature of how information is delivered, and important for a university that has 20,000 online students, embedding the library in every aspect of online education, which our online education people were pretty skeptical about, because their model had been, you put all the materials you need within the shell, and then the students get it, and they don't have to go anywhere else. Taking it as a given that the students in that environment are really going to look within the shell, how do we embed deeply rich information resources within that educational context? And he's taken this on. So leadership is important, but the leadership of the provost and the president also equally important, not for the library of yesterday, but designing the library for today. And funding is a very important issue, but the funding should be tied to a sense that what the library is doing is serving the current research and educational needs of folks on campus and who are served by distance learning. And what Jim has done, and I know because I talked to some of the I had lunch with a couple of librarians last week, is he's done a very painful but important transformation of the structure, because what he had seen in terms of the library staffing was that it was a model from what libraries looked like 30 years ago. And so he's done a painful reorganization to align the mission of the library with what the library needs to do on a campus like ours. So the libraries remain central. Everything we do in research and in education is dependent on information, on reliable information delivered effectively, and for students, understanding how to use that information. We need libraries to really look to the future and to think about their own operations so that they are completely equal partners in designing what education and research look like in the next 30 years.
Arizona State University has had incredible growth over the last decades. I think it's maybe the largest university by enrollment, public university in the country. And usually administrators like to brag about having grown, things at Central Florida and so on.
Right.
What would you say were any mistakes that were made in the incredible growth of Arizona State?
Well, there are a lot of mistakes that get made on a daily basis. And we're not afraid of making mistakes. The president really, and the president's an inspirational leader, and we've all been, the folks that are still there are energized by what he says. There was a lot of change and a lot of people left. He'll throw things against the wall. Some of them stick, some of them do not. I'll talk about a mistake which was not directly tied to growth of student numbers at the institution, but I mentioned one of the units that I oversee is the School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies. And so somewhere in the provost's, and this happened before I got there, in the provost and the president's brain, he thought that those disciplines had a lot in common, which anybody who's here from philosophy, religious studies, or history will know that in fact that is not a natural combination. Now, the school was put to, unlike the School of Historical of Human Evolution and Social Change, which was carefully designed, was infused with resources, and was able to build both research and innovative educational areas. Shippers, as we call the School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies, was put together after 2008 when we needed to cut costs. And it was a kind of, after the fact, an application of nobody from ASU was looking at this, a bogus kind of justification for having done it. And so we have had nearly not quite a decade of a lot of discomfort among great faculty who don't understand what the institution wants of them. The students don't want an integrated history, philosophy, and religious studies program. Students come in and they want to major in history or philosophy or religious studies. So that was a mistake, and a mistake that we're living through. I agreed with the decision not to walk it back. There were a lot of faculty who said, let's just do a restart. I don't think that was going to be effective for a number of reasons, which I could get into if you're a philosopher at another time. But that was a mistake that's had lasting and negative repercussions on the quality of life of faculty who in many cases are really profoundly talented scholars and teachers.
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Pam Murray, and I'm in the history department here at UAB. And I'd like to follow up on the question that Daniel asked you regarding libraries. I serve on an academic press board, the University of Alabama Press. I'm a member of the faculty editorial board. And so, books are still being produced. And one of my concerns, and I know it's a concern that is shared by other faculty in the humanities and social sciences here at UAB, is that we've stopped purchasing books on anything like a regular basis. As I understand it, it's been since about 2008 since we've had a regular fund for book purchases. We have occasional pots of money, as I understand it, but we've not had a real commitment since about 2008. And I do think books remain an important tool that libraries need to supply both faculty and students with. In fact, many students, as I understand it, since I teach, don't really like necessarily the on-screen digital book. So we do need books for our research as well. So my question to you is, in this vision that you have for transforming the library, and it's a vision that others have expressed very similarly, how will you preserve the tools that we as faculty and students continue to need in our research and teaching?
And I don't want to get into the two things that I really can't address right now, which are how your library does individual book purchasing, which I haven't talked with people about. And also a larger question is the ecosystem of scholarly communication, particularly in the book-oriented areas like history or English literature or the foreign languages. And that is a very complicated question, and I have my own kind of view on it, which is not really germane to the very practical issues you raise about how do we get the research tools that our faculty need to continue their research. While books are being produced, and they're not going to go away, the library needs to be able to procure the resources that faculty like you need to do your research. Now, some faculties do it through interlibrary loan. That can be expensive. Some libraries will purchase books when a faculty member asks for them. So automatic book purchasing, at least at the libraries I've been working with in the last couple of jobs that I've had, they've reduced the amount of automatic book purchasing. That has had less of an impact on individual faculty research because faculty can still get those books. It's had more of an impact on, you've mentioned your role with the press. It's had more of an impact on how universities understand what their scholarly presses are doing. So that is a larger question. It's actually an intellectual question I'm really interested in, but the on-the-ground question is how can you get the materials you need to do your research? And as provost, I would be charged with making sure you could get those materials. And that is something absolutely that needs to be done. An example I'll use is, and this is one of the best things that I was able to do as dean at Arizona State. We had an opportunity hire, and I didn't talk about that under diversity, but it is one of the best ways of enhancing effective diversity of an institution. If you have an attractive institution, go out and recruit really good faculty members. So at Arizona State, I had a faculty member who came to me the first year, the director of Shippers, and said, well, when I was at Brown, I had this brilliant PhD student named Matt Delmont, and he's over at Scripps College now, and he'd like to be at a research university. Let's hire him. I advocated, and it cost a lot of advocation and a lot of money, but we brought Matt and his spouse, Jackie Wernemont, who's a brilliant feminist, digital humanist, and Renaissance scholar, brought them to Arizona State. And one of the things Matt asked for, he's a historian of African American culture of the 20th century, he said, I need the African American newspapers database. And we'd put together a good startup package and a huge salary for him. And I went to the library and I said, my God, this guy wants a database of African American newspapers. It's going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to acquire. And I've got to give the libraries a lot of credit. They worked really hard even at the end of the year when there was very little money left. And they went ahead and, because it was a really important recruitment tool to get this absolutely amazingly brilliant faculty member who just won a Guggenheim 2 weeks ago, got him this database. Now what Matt has done, which I think has helped solidify the library's value in doing this, is that Matt now runs a website and a Twitter feed called Black Quotidian, where he takes snippets for a whole year. I think he's not doing it anymore, but for a whole year, he took a snippet from an African American newspaper of the last century and tweeted it out. Project got a lot of publicity. It was a great way for our humanists, a great model for our humanists to do public humanities work that took advantage of library resources. So it was showing off, this is what we have. This is why it matters to the world. You know, a couple $100,000 for one scholar, I would have pushed for it, but the fact that he was able to translate that investment into a broad kind of public intervention was something we need not every faculty member to do, but we need more faculty members to think creatively about ways in which they can reach a broader public with the resources that we make available to them to do, even in some cases, very detailed research.
Other questions?
Hey, actually, I'm a UA grad, so over there in Tucson.
Okay, well, sorry about that. Just kidding. It's a little bit
Anyway,
of robbery.
one of the things I often think about when I think about, I've been here for a long time, and you start to see sort of patterns of what happens in higher education. And some of the times I think that as we, we've definitely, higher education has gone that total, I don't want to say total, but very close to a numbers route where we're evaluated on credit hour production, we're evaluated on retention rates, we're evaluated on graduation rates, and these are all, I think important.
Right.
I don't want to say that. At the same time, and I want to say this as a faculty member, I feel that there's less of an emphasis on faculty, that we're here for our students, and yes, I know I'm in a service profession, but I didn't take orders, and I didn't commit to being, poorly paid, ultimately. So what do you take to a faculty who often sometimes feels like administrators think we're spoiled children and we have to defend every little thing from decent salary to sabbaticals, to book purchases to do our work, to smaller class sizes so we can do our work? And how do you balance that with, as you stuff, as classes get bigger and bigger and bigger, education gets more anonymous, retention is, some of my freshman students don't know who their faculty, their names, and they get their little early alerts, you gotta come to class,
Sure.
and it's all part of the package of an administrator about retention. And sometimes I feel that amongst this, and I don't know, I think it's shared by some of my faculties, is that we've become sort of an anonymous pipeline to produce graduates rather than to educate anybody. And how do you respond to that? Even things like we have, a lot of adjuncts who are very poorly paid, $2,000 a course maybe, that everyone knows about, and everyone knows it's scandalous, and no one has really done anything about it in higher education. And so why don't you talk to that? And what is the vision for this faculty who you want to be entrepreneurial, but we also feel overworked and underpaid and sort of slapped around in a little bit?
Well, do we have a couple more hours? I'd take some of that apart. The general statement I'd make is something I think everybody here who stands here is going to say, which is true, which is the faculty is the core of the institution. If we don't have a healthy, vibrant, recognized faculty, and that recognition comes in terms of both salary, in terms of merit increases, in terms of the non-monetary recognition. I'm a big believer, it doesn't paper over the lack of those things, but a big believer in news stories and recognition. When our faculty do cool things, and I especially feel this as a Dean of Humanities, I want everything that's really cool that my faculty do projected to the entire institution. And that doesn't make up for bad salaries or raises, but it does try to put the attention of the institution on the people who are doing the teaching and the research. And that's where it should go. It shouldn't go, obviously, on people like me. I can talk about the adjunct issue. $2,000 a course is not something that I would condone, but I'm also going to say I'm not here, and so I don't want to come here and claim I'd come here and suddenly everybody would get paid $10,000 a course, which is patently not true. I can say that at Arizona State, we've actually made a very deep commitment to decreasing the number of truly adjunct faculty, which we call faculty associates, who teach one or maybe 2 courses a semester. We have increased the number of full-time non-tenure track contract faculty, and we've increased their salaries. So the minimum for the lowest rung on advancement for our non-tenure track faculty is now $45,000 a year, which isn't great. And so you're teaching 4 or in some cases 5 courses for $49,000 a year. That's hard work, but it isn't, I think it is humane. And it's something that I don't feel embarrassed about saying in public. So there are ways that we need to change that. But what I get at the heart of it is that you feel, and the class size issue we could talk about, I actually think I would like to charge faculty to rethink the structure of what their curriculum looks like. So we still, in higher education, in most universities, have this funnel model. Yeah, as a freshman, you're going to have 1,000 people. By the time you're a senior and you're one of us and you've majored in our discipline, you're going to have a seminar of 10 people. I'd actually challenge faculty to think very differently. Why don't we have seminars of 10 to 20 people for freshmen? You're a sophomore or a junior and you're gaining a lot of information. Maybe then you have a class of 100 or 200, and then you come back to an intensive seminar-like session for a senior year. I think that a lot of us just sort of take it for granted. You have the big class and then you have the little class, but I'd love to challenge the faculty to think about putting smaller classes first and thinking about how that works within retention rates, generation of tuition, everything else, the business aspect of the university, which needs to work for you to get paid, for you to have a salary that you actually deserve, and for you to have merit increases every year. So it's a complex environment, as we all know. I think what's important is that you understand why decisions are made, that you are in charge of the really important aspects of how to manage academic programs. You're allowed creativity to do so. But I also, and this is an anecdote that really came home to me when my first year as dean at Arizona State, we had an outside evaluating committee for a School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies. And there was a very prominent historian from Illinois who actually had been a friend of mine, was part of the team, and she hated what was happening at Arizona State. And that became very clear. And the tipping point for me, and maybe for her too, was she was talking to me and she said, I heard President Crow speaking to the World Bank this week. He had been giving a talk at the World Bank. And he said to the World Bank and in this public presentation, Arizona State University is a student-centered university. And I thought, that is a terrible thing for a research university to say that it's a student-centered university. Well, I don't see the conflict there. And it doesn't mean that the faculty aren't absolutely valued. I don't think it is disvaluing the faculty to say that we are all here, not in a service capacity, because, you know, we are all serving and we should be, but you're here and you should have respect, autonomy, the ability with freedom to pursue intellectual pursuits and research. But if we are not serving our students, we all should be fired. And I mean that, and that includes me and includes anybody else who's working at the university. The students have to be at the center of what we do, or else the public won't care really about what we do. We'll lose support internally, externally, and we won't do the great social good that these institutions are meant to do.
Dean Justice, you started moving into the area of my question. Earlier, you talked about student success, about retention, persistence, graduation. And there have been tremendous successes at Arizona State in the context of still growing and providing that access to everyone. Could you speak a little bit more about your thoughts about how to achieve that?
And I think that there are a couple of different ways that I would start that question. And again, it does have to come back to faculty figuring out, in my major, how do we achieve success? So one thing that we've done is we've really made it much easier for students to get into programs and to know what they have to do to complete programs. And that's informational in some ways. At ASU, everybody has to declare a major prior to coming to the university. So you declare a major, and you are presented with a major map. And that major map tells you, and you know, there are downsides to this as well. And this is not a panacea, and it certainly devalues some of the intellectual exploration that a humanist like me was able to experience in my first 2 years of college in a very privileged and well-prepared situation. But so it's been incredibly helpful for students to be able to say, I'm going to major in blank, and I know what I need to take, and the advisors know what I need to take, and I'm on track. And if I come off track, the advisors know that I'm off track, and they know exactly, you know, if I'm not going to succeed in this track, here are other majors which can help me succeed at the institution. So we do start them in a major so that they know where they're going, and they're not just taking classes without any sense of where they're headed. But we also know there's about 50% what we call churn in the first 2 years where students change majors. And so having really well-trained advisors who can say, you came here and you wanted to study mechanical engineering, your math skills are not up to par, let's move you into a program, and we have all sorts of technology programs which don't require advanced calculus. Here's a program where you can work with things you're interested in. Here's a career path that stems from this degree, and here are the courses you need to stay on track and get there. And it isn't the same. I went to a small liberal arts college where we all did everything, and I loved that. And we have in our honors college a lot of students who benefit from that kind of experience. But we have a lot of students for whom being able to understand why they're taking what they're taking and where it's leading, for a first-generation student from a lot of the second-rate schools, public schools in Arizona, that's going to help them succeed and get somewhere. And we can be all high and mighty and say, well, I want you to do this and this and this, and then at the end of your sophomore year, decide what your major is, and many of those students don't come back. So that's one very concrete way we've been able to aid retention. Culturally, the president and the provost have turned the attention of everybody to retention. Every dean's meeting I'm in, retention, retention. Here are our rates, here are where we need to be. I want you, and I want your chairs and directors, and I want your faculty and your advisors to talk. Somebody needs to talk to every student at the end of their first semester at college and tell them we look forward to welcoming you back in the spring. And this is what's going to happen when you come back for the spring. And we also need direct intervention when there are issues. So if somebody comes to you and says, I'm having financial problems, which is, of course, one of the important reasons why people stop at certain points in their career, there needs to be somebody at the university who helps them fix the problem. And it's not bureaucratic red tape, it's structures which allow students to get from point A to point B and continue their studies. So it's a team effort from everybody from the academic side to the financial side to the culture of success side, and making sure that, especially in those first year classes, every student feels like they are valued, appreciated, and that, you know, we may be off doing our research in the library for 50% of our time, but when we're in the classroom, your success is what's important. President, who is a great teller of fables about his own youth, is really negative about having experienced as a younger man, you know, the classes where you look to your right, you look to your left, and one of you is going to be here at the end of the semester. And I don't think any of us really feels that way, but I think part of that culture still pervades what we think of as excellence. And what we have to do is really mull over what excellence is. It doesn't mean we're not doing the amazing things that you can pull off in the honors college, but it also means taking students for whom college is going to be a very big struggle, but who can get through, graduate with a bachelor's degree, and have a productive life. That is just as much a marker of excellence as a student who goes on as a Rhodes Scholar or a Marshall Scholar or anything else.
Great, thank you. Dr. Justice, if you join me in thanking him one last time. And thank you all for participating in the process. Again, please go online and send us your feedback. We are very anxious to receive that. Thank you again for a great presentation today. we'll see y'all next week.
And I put my contact information up. Sincerely, be very happy to hear from any of you about any of the things that we talked about or didn't talk about today.